Okay, are we ready? Good afternoon. I'd like to call to order the Board of Supervisors regular meeting for Wednesday, September 4th. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moment of silence. Thank you. Unless someone else has a potential change to the agenda, I would like to recommend that we move Q1, which is the RCWSA agenda item, to right after public comment, similar to what we did last month for another item.
For the evening agenda?
Yes, ma'am?
So Q1 to after the evening public comment.
Yes. Oh, gotcha. Yep,
Not to be confused with the days.
after the N1, correct.
And is there any inclination to move the raw operations agreement up as well, or just that one particular item?
The roll item is really just a preliminary update on that topic.
Oh, okay.
Don't expect there'll be roll people here.
If that's the motion, I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'd recommend Mike's down for the board. All right. Moving into presentations, we have Dr. Grimsley, School Board Superintendent.
Too short for me. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. Good afternoon from your Rep Panther family. We are so pleased to report we have had a smooth, successful first month, well, I guess 15 days of school at our CPS. Students and staff are thrilled to be back together. You will be pleased to know that both the elementary and high school were fully accredited again this year, even with the many changes that have been implemented already in assessing growth and mastery that were implemented last year, and there will be more to come this year. But more detailed information about our accreditation report will be shared next week at our September 10th school board meeting at 6:30 p.m. at the high school library. You may have read that 2 new career pathways have become more attainable and affordable for our high school students with the launch of 2 brand new academies, the Future Educators Academy and the Trades Academy. Both aim to provide quality education for students while helping alleviate workforce shortages. The Future Educators Academy is a new program made possible through a collaboration with Germanna Community College, Laurel Ridge Community College, JMU, Mary Washington, and 4 school districts, Rappahannock, Culpeper, Orange, and Madison. We were able to work together to tap into Governor Youngkin's lab school funding to create a sustainable model for an early grow your own program for teachers. Students enrolled in the program will earn an associate's degree in education at the time of high school graduation, will transfer credits automatically into one of the 4-year partners education programs to receive a teaching license and a bachelor's degree in 2 years after graduation, and then commit to working in one of the partnering school districts for a minimum of 2 years. The program will expand to LRCC footprint next fall and include 8 more partnering school districts. Congratulations to the first cohort of future educators who began the program last week and were able to meet the governor in a special ribbon-cutting ceremony at Germanna to kick off the semester. The Trades Academy kicked off with a special orientation on August 15th, where 7 RCHS seniors and their families were able to meet and work with the skilled staff at LRCC Workforce Solutions to go over the expectations and layout of the inaugural HVAC program. As a dual enrollment program offered in collaboration between the community college and RCHS, the seniors will split their time between the Laurel Ridge Community College campus in Warrenton and the high school. Throughout the semester, the students will learn core HVAC skills such as safety, wiring, installation, maintenance, and troubleshooting throughout this hybrid class, incorporating online modules and hands-on time in the classroom and lab. Upon successfully completing the course, students will be awarded 2 nationally recognized credentials through the National Center for Construction Education and Research, NCCER, in core craft skills and HVAC Level 1, which will help them obtain employment in the workforce following high school graduation. A huge shout out to Lisa Heiser, the Fast Forward career coach and former RCHS career coach, and Donna Comer of Workforce Solutions for their collaboration and persistence in getting this program off the ground. The Trades Academy will offer a similar experience for interested students in plumbing this spring and following electrical, it sounds like, next year. Meanwhile, at the elementary school, Headwaters has successfully launched their first week of the after-school enrichment program. The program is such an essential part of the learning experience at RCPS and involves so many dedicated staff and volunteers to offer such awesome workshops as home economics, sports and nutrition, arts and crafts, totality martial arts, dance, STEM, and agriculture, homework help, and more. Thank you to the Headwaters Foundation and the community volunteers who keep this essential after-school program running so smoothly for our families. Finally, fall sports are well underway for our Panthers. All of our coaches and student athletes are working diligently toward the success of our programs. Our first football home game against Blessed Sacrament Huguenot was a thrilling event with our Panthers coming out victorious with a score of 37-15. The band debuted their marching show for the season, Jailbreak, a show where our students plot how to break out of jail and beat to the beat of the well-known songs like Cell Block Tango, Crazy Train, and Smooth Criminal. The cheerleaders kept the crowd getting ROWDY with their cheers and stunts and their phenomenal numbers. We have 37 cheerleaders that came out for our 2 teams. It was an incredible evening with the rap community. Thanks for all of you who came out. We do have an upgrade to our website with a new calendar of events page, so I hope you have seen that. Here you will find all upcoming events in a more user-friendly format, as well as a link to the athletics events calendar. You can also subscribe to receive email updates about upcoming events as well. Please see the RCPS Happenings and Highlights page under the Calendar tab, but also it is linked directly from the homepage. We thank you so much for your continuous support of the school system and for your collaborative effort with the school board and Headwaters to engage with a lobbyist for our Richmond funding efforts. Very excited about that. And this fresh off the press since I printed my report, Mr. Whitson at the roundtable, I know you were in attendance at that. We talked about the REACH initiative, which was initially an outgrowth of SIFT, the original SIFT teams, about philanthropic support and really working to leverage additional funds to help support our tiered system of supports in different domains: academic, mental health, teacher morale, recruitment, retention. So we have the REACH initiative this year launching. It's the first of 3 years. So I just wanted to leave behind a little reading material about that because I know you'd asked about it. So if I could. Pass down. Okay. Thank you. Do you have any questions for me?
Sure. Dr. Grimsley, thanks a lot. And it's hard to believe we're back in school.
Happens quick.
Last month you talked about the significant staff turnover and your great effort. And again, congratulations on filling so many open positions in time for the start of school. So I just want to emphasize that I think it will be important going forward for us as local representatives to hear from you from time to time on the question of retention and recruitment, to include obviously compensation, which then filters down to fundamental budget questions we have to wrestle with each year. And so I would just encourage you as you come back to report from time to time, if you could focus on what specific tangible efforts are being made to both recruit and retain excellent instructors in our school system, And then one question, I wouldn't expect you to answer this off the cuff, but it is something I would like to hear about perhaps next month with maybe some help from your finance person. But I would like to know across the school system in terms of the significant turnover we've seen and the fact that you brought in new hires. I'd like to understand the aggregate impact of those new hires in terms of your overall personnel cost. In other words, are we going out and recruiting senior people who are semi-retired who command high salaries? Are we giving young people an opportunity to work in a dynamic school system and hiring them at a lower level that might both benefit them and benefit taxpayers? So I'd be anxious to get a little bit of analysis to understand, aside from the personnel issue and challenge that comes with staff turnover, what is the fiscal impact of that turnover as we head soon into another budget season? Thank you.
So for the next month?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it would be
Oh, come
fair
on.
to anyone to ask for that analysis on the spot. But I think it's important to understand personnel costs, obviously,
Yes.
almost the whole ballgame.
It is.
Right.
You're exactly right.
So I think it's important for us to know now rather than late in the year, early next year, what the budget impact of that significant turnover really is. Thank you.
I was not here last meeting, so did I hear him say that you all spoke about this turnover at the last meeting? Did you address this?
A bit, yes, because we had a higher than normal turnover rate. Still pretty on par with what we're seeing in the state and the nation. But for us, it's more challenging and definitely higher than we've seen in the past. So it was I think it was, I want to say 14%, which is pretty high for us. We usually maintain about a 6 to 8% turnover rate. So for us, that was pretty high. We were a little anxious back in May and June when we were trying to fill all those vacancies, but pleased to say we had them all filled for the start of school.
So yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yes.
Was historically, what is the, I don't know how far your data would go back, but what is the turnover rate historically? 10, 20 years, 30 years, if you have it? And then compare it against regional, state, national, if you have that.
That's not difficult to pull, and I can,
Yeah, next
that will
meeting, that'd be
definitely be a
awesome.
big part of our budget report as we're developing that, because that is a major focus this year in our strategic plan as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Crimsley.
Next, we have the Company 4 monthly report.
Good afternoon. Dr. Grimsley's always a tough act to follow, but I've got such good stuff to report this month, I can try to approach her enthusiasm and positivity. I should apologize for my appearance. I mean no disrespect. I'm appearing as a scruffy old man in our theater here at the end of the month. The old part comes naturally, but the scruffy, I have to start working at it. So, in the last month, we had 17 EMS calls, and we responded to 14 of them. We did 4 transports, and scratch, that leaves 3 scratches. Fire calls total of 12, and we responded to 10 of them with 2 scratches. We have 5 new EMTs released to provide care by the medical director, and 1 released paramedic has been released by the OMD to provide ALS care. We've staffed the station in the 14 days since the 16th of August, over 272 hours, when the initial 3 EMTs were released. And that staffing has been done with 8 personnel, typically 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So we're getting out quicker as well as more often. Some days are shorter depending on availability of personnel. We have 1 ALS provider, a paramedic currently precepting to be released to provide ALS care. And the ambulance, with the help of the county ESC, is being upgraded to an ALS unit. We have 40 members. We're going to vote on 5 more tonight. One of them wants to be an EMT, and one of them wants to be a firefighter, and both have signed up for the EVOC and CPR next set of classes. So, thank you for your support, and may I answer questions?
Those are incredible numbers. Thank you.
Just think of where we were a year ago.
Appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dr. Hill.
All right, report from Rappahannock County REMS Council representative.
Okay, I'm Lisa Palmer. I'm one of the two REMS representatives. I'm a member of Washington Volunteer Fire and Rescue. I'm their EMS chief as well as their designated infectious control officer. So I think the most important thing to talk about as to what has been discussed in REMS is the changes in the pharmacy program, also known as the medication kit exchange program. Now, this came about due to an FDA Drug Supply Chain Security Act that was enacted in 2013. Virginia has not been compliant for 10 years, so they gave us a 1-year grace period. So effective November 2024, there will no longer be a regional drug box exchange program, which means we can no longer go to the hospital and exchange our used drugs for new drugs. What it really comes about is that if you need to carry medications, and most likely, for the narcotics, it's a little bit more specific, but you need to have a controlled substance registration, or a CSR, as well as a DEA license. That is in order to order, stock, or prepare drug kits. This affects more the advanced life systems rather than the basic life support. The requirements of this is a secure area to house medications, proper documentation and record keeping of the drugs for Schedule 2 through 6 drugs, and that comes to be a little bit more expensive. The statewide transition date to go to this new program is November 12th, 2024. REMS did supply guidance to obtaining a CSR and a DEA license. The contact is Kelly Rideout. She is the Performance Improvement Specialist. Fauquier is going to stop providing medications as of 11/27. In the last meeting, which was August 21st, 2024, we had a presentation by Brian Hudson from the Virginia Hospital and Healthcare Association. The topic was supply needs for drug boxes. This was supposed to say that we could do cost savings in contract negotiations, and through a solutions, a BHA Solutions, have a distributor from McKesson. The contact is Victor Baker. He can assist with DEA licenses, although the DEA license is not that hard to get. Washington just got theirs. How to order on the controlled substance ordering system platform, customer service, next day delivery, and you can set up account, and the setup account is free. Most of the work is done by the pharmacy programs, is done by the pharmacy work group. They sent out a survey originally at the end of last year to see who had CSRs and who needed DEA. It was unclear at that time whether you would need a DEA license. They also sent out a survey for a drug program asking if they wanted the regional council to actually have a program to distribute drugs and medications. 100% of those responding to that survey had no interest in that program. For Rappahannock County, it probably wouldn't be good to have because it's an hour and a half to go to Fredericksburg to pick up those drugs. So that didn't actually work. So they've talked about, the cost of medications. Through all the discussions in the last year or so, most people think that the highest cost of this program is actually getting the secure rooms for the drugs rather than the drugs themselves. However, there's concern in that there's a lot of drugs that we don't use, and if they expire, it's wasted money. So that is a problem for rural counties. The other presentation was by Karen Owens. She's the acting deputy director of EMS. Her report didn't have anything to do with the pharmacy program, but she reported that there are 3 diseases of concerns. One is a parvovirus, which is Fitz disease, Mpox, and Oropouchi disease that we're supposed to look out for. The last one is usually for only travelers, and that there has been an advertisement for their EMS director's position. The grant cycle is open for the September deadline of September 16th, and that's for the Rescue Squad Assistance Fund, and that's what we use usually to supply ambulance, help support our ambulance, getting ambulances and equipment. They're getting ready to supply another supplies to Ukraine, so if anybody's interested, that has been distributed.
And that's pretty much it for the last EMS meeting that we had for the REMS Council. I can take any questions.
That's a great update, and thanks a lot. I know this is the first time we're hearing directly from you or Mr. Atkins, and I think it's going to be super useful, especially you, right off the bat, you hit on one big issue that everyone's facing, which is management of pharmaceuticals. So very timely, and I know I appreciate you taking the time on a Monday afternoon to come here, so thank you. Just two follow-up questions. While you were speaking, you mentioned a program that some sort of program or protocol that was not appropriate for Rappahannock County. I didn't quite catch the details of that.
The one for the drug exchange program through,
Okay.
right? So, I mean, it doesn't make sense for us to go to Fredericksburg to get our drugs.
Okay.
It's an hour-and-a-half drive.
Got it.
So it's easier for us to order them. The
Okay.
unknown at this time is that if there's a quantity limitation, I haven't gotten to that point yet, even with my own company, as to I do go to the Fauquier EMS Fire and Rescue Association meetings from Chief Clough. I have obtained, he actually went through all the drugs that they have in Fauquier County and where to get them from and which is the most cost effective for them. I have distributed, I think I sent it to Darren, and I also sent it to, I think I sent it to Todd, but anybody who wanted it, I have a copy of that. So we do not know at this time where the best place to order the medications from. One of the shortcomings of this program is that you cannot exchange drugs from one company to another. That would be considered distribution, and that is not what this act follows. So we can't say, hey, I need some, and go to Darren and say, hey, he can't give them to us. So we have to actually supply them ourselves. So that's a problem that we actually talked in REMS as to if you could have that exchange, and the only way that would be worked if we were all under one agency, which we are not.
Okay. And then you mentioned, my last question, you mentioned waste and expiration of drugs being a particularly significant issue in a rural community. And I just wonder if there's anything that we could do from a county EMS perspective to avoid waste? Or
Well,
is it all going to come down on individual companies and how they?
It's all going to come down to individual companies. Now, I'm currently on the EMS Fauquier Protocol Committee. We are going through all the protocols and all the drugs that are used. They are going, at some point, we are going to go through the number of times Fauquier uses the particular drugs that we're using. Right now, we only have 4 narcotics anyway.
Okay.
So we have fentanyl, we have, fentanyl, morphine, milazepam, and these are all schedule, there are 4 of them that are schedule 1 through 5, which is the ones we really have to keep track of. And we're hoping maybe we can get rid of one of those, like morphine, because we don't use it.
Right.
But no, there's really, I mean, you'll have your minimum that you have on your ambulance, and then you'll have your spares once you use them. And hopefully we can, after doing it for a period of time, know how much we should have on hand based on use.
And I assume that going forward, just from a spending and efficiency and budgeting perspective, there should be some way for us across all companies to determine how much waste is occurring and the costs associated with that waste, right?
You should, but again, we can't exchange what we
Right.
get.
Right,
And
right.
see, that's where the problem comes. I don't know, there is some wordage. I actually talked to the Board of Pharmacy because there were some things that I was not clear of as to this new program. And that was who was able to audit and look at those drugs, at what level of certification you had to have, whether you needed to be able to dispense. Right now, the person that does the auditing, counting, witnessing to all these things that has to be documented has to be a provider that's able to dispense, which could make it hard for companies that don't have a lot of paramedics. That is supposedly changing with the new version, but that has not been accepted by the Board of Pharmacy at this time.
Okay. Thanks a lot for all the information.
Thank you, Lisa. So am I correct in understanding this? For instance, Washington gets a DEA license with the CFS or whatever, and then let's say Amosville does.
Mm-hmm.
You guys are not allowed to, when somebody has a shortfall,
Correct,
unless you're under the same EMS license.
everybody would have to be under the same EMS license. That is correct.
So DEA certification, they don't want you distributing.
Correct.
As long as there's one DEA certification under which everybody's getting the same drugs, then you can. Is that what?
My understanding is that we have to be under the same EMS license,
Got it.
right? It has to be under the same, so what Fauquier did is all their volunteer companies are no longer volunteer, they're all under Fauquier, so Fauquier can have their own drug dispensing to all the hub and spoke model. You've got a hub, and they can do it. We can do that because Washington has a license, Amosville has a license, Berryville has a license, okay?
Thank you.
So that cannot occur, because that would be considered dispensing. And you have to have a CSR as well as a DEA.
Yeah. Couldn't remember the acronym.
Yeah, both of them.
CSR.
You know, Darren continues to look at different approaches to stay within the legalities and be as flexible as possible. And I don't think there's any deadline to find new models. If we all go our separate ways before November, there's nothing stopping a unique model from
That is correct.
developing in next November. And I think the work that's happening behind the scenes is leading to similar equipment to be deployed so that we're as flexible as possible in the future.
That is correct. We are getting the same NARC boxes. And so I think what we're trying to do is coordinate that everybody has the same equipment. So we can do that, yes. That is my understanding, knowing what Darren and what everybody tells me at Washington when I'm there.
Awesome. This was incredibly instructive. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for being here. All right, next is a recognition of life-saving actions.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and board members. My name is Catherine Waters. I am the Recruitment and Retention Coordinator for Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue. And today we're kind of starting out something new. We're embarking on a new journey. On August 6th at 9:33, Rappahannock County Sheriff Office was notified of a possible cardiac arrest located at 706 Zachary Taylor Highway, which is also known as Settle's Grocery and Garage. Prior to the arrival of emergency personnel, Ben Hahn noticed the downed person and immediately began taking action to assist. While on the phone with Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office, Lieutenant Janie Jenkins began giving instructions over the phone for Ben to perform CPR. While on the phone, Ben was able to start chest compressions until ALS 1400 arrived on scene. Ben continued to assist with chest compressions while ALS 1400 began initiating advanced life support care. After 180 shock was delivered, ALS 1400 was able to get cardiac pulse back on the patient. Medic 1409, which is also known as Chester Gap, arrived at the location and was able to transport the patient to the nearest hospital with ALS 1400 on board. At this time, I would like to call individual members. Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue would like to thank those who had key roles in ensuring this tragic event did have a more positive outcome after this patient sustained cardiac arrest. Without the willingness of Ben Hahn, you can please be so kind to stand. Ben Hahn acted within 22 seconds after the patient collapsed. That patient would likely not have been able to survive this event had he not taken that opportunity. We would like to present you this opportunity award because without your hard work and your ability and initiation to act, this person would not have been able to survive in those first 10 minutes. So we really truly thank you for this. You're welcome, sir. All right. Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue would like to thank Lieutenant Janie Jenkins from Rappahannock County Sheriff's Office for giving clear over-the-phone CPR instructions to Ben during this critical time. We're almost done. Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue would like to thank ALS 1400, which was Wayne Dotson at the time, for initiating early defibrillation and providing the highest level of care and compassion to the patient during this time. Wayne?
Great job.
Lastly, Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue would like to thank Medic 1409 from Chester Gap for a quick response and continuing patient care en route to the nearest hospital. And luckily, we have the crew who assisted on this day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board, very much for allowing us this opportunity, and we look forward to doing this in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kat?
Public comment. At this time, I would like to open up for public comment. Anyone wishing to speak, because of the number of people, I'd like to stick to 3 minutes. Please be recognized, give us your name and your district, and put up your hand and we'll get started.
No problem.
Nope. Yes, ma'am.
Amazing.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Jack Atkins, Amosville, Jackson District. I'd like to talk about two things, I guess. Public safety is starting to recommend to buy life packs for all the companies. This is going to be an ongoing every 10 years. Ours in Amosville will be coming up for replacement in about 3 years. So we expect the same treatment that everybody else gets. At this time, we have replaced a $36,000 stretcher. It's been denied by the Chiefs Committee. You got to have a stretcher in order to have an ambulance. And that stretcher is operational. We have a guidelines set 20 or 25 years ago, $10,000 limit on anything that had a 10-year life expectancy. So that needs to be raised. Life packs, AEDs, and everything is out of sight. And another thing I'd like to talk about is, in order to have our carnival this year, we had to pay for security. It cost the company over $1,000. I think it's about $1,300. I don't have a bill with me. That needs to have a line item in somebody's budget. We taking fundraising money to pay for security for our carnival. I don't think it's appropriate. And we had to do it on account of we couldn't get the parade. Couldn't have the parade. Gary wouldn't sign it. Connie wouldn't sign it. So it's time for all of us to start working together. Down the road, we'll be back. If they buy these stretchers, all these other companies, we expect the same thing in Amosville. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Damaris Miller, Hampton District. It's wonderful to see all of the representation from the fire and rescue companies today. Nothing in this county is more important than the fire and rescue services that are provided to our citizens. Speaking of our citizens, Our citizens, our voters, our taxpayers are the indispensable people in this county, more so than any other entity. I want to talk briefly about the compensation package. I'm a research psychologist, but for 12 years, I was a cash cow for the U.S. Department of Personnel Management. I learned a little bit about compensation packages during that time. This proposed package is out of line with the surrounding counties, especially when you consider the population of each of the counties. Furthermore, one of the things that we learned that was critical, if you have a compensation package for any person on your staff that has a golden parachute that is too rich, it means that when it comes time to make a decision about that person, you cannot afford to do anything except keep them on board. A compensation package that has a golden parachute that is too rich is a bad compensation package. There are other problems too, but I will address only those. I can tell you for certain that if any of you vote in favor of the compensation package that was presented to us through the board docs and through the paper, we will mount an effort that will make the No Bike Trail campaign look like tiddlywinks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Not on public comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Damaris.
Yep, you're going to come up? Yep.
My name is John Sullivan. I live here in town, Hampton District. One, I want to apologize for looking like a slob, and I'm not being disrespectful, but I've been gardening. Number two, I do not intend to threaten you. I do not intend to threaten you with regard to how you deal with an issue. Thank you. I do want to speak to the very issue that was just raised in such a, shall we say, forceful way. I gather tonight you will be dealing, or in the future, with the compensation package for Mr. Curran. I've lived in this county for quite some time, no, not 3 generations. I've seen county administrators come and go, come for a long time, McCarthy, some come and go, come and go, come and go. And this gentleman, I think, has done an extraordinary job. Under all kinds of duress at different times, and all kinds of pressure, and just the demands of the job. Number two, I am not going to debate, and it's not my job to say he should get X or Y or this or that or this or that. But it does not seem to me, as someone who's been in business, an off the wall from what I've read in the paper. I trust your judgment to figure out what's the best solution. That's what you get paid the big bucks for. But I want to encourage you to think in the following terms. This gentleman has done a very, very good job for whatever it is, 4 or 5 years, however long. I think, as I understood from the paper, he is looking to sort of, in effect, get more money, I get that, but also have a sense of the relationship that he has with you, the Board of Supervisors. And there's a lot of heavy lifting that's going to be done in the next 4 or 5 years. And I sort of sense it's everybody's interest, I believe it's in everybody's, to have a clear understanding as to the degree to which everybody's comfortable with each other and wants to support each other. And I don't think this is a time to, we all worry about money, we worry about taxes, we all worry about expenses. But if you think this person is worth what's on the table, I plead with you not to back down, because there are some people who will be unhappy with it. Of course there will be. The guy's going to get paid a hell of a lot more than anybody else in this county. So some people are going to be unhappy, right? Okay. The question is he worth it? Is this a long-term engagement one wants to continuing. And now I'm gonna be a little flippant and silly, and I hope I don't get into trouble. I don't know how many of you follow baseball. I happen to be a Philadelphia Phillies fan. Don't boo me. We've been in the World Series or near the World Series for the last couple of years. We got 3 or 4 players from the Washington Nationals. They're getting us there. They're the best. The Washington Nationals wouldn't meet what these guys wanted to get paid. So they're in Philadelphia. The Nationals are near the bottom, the Phillies in the top. Rappahannock deserves to be in the top. We are. We need the best, and we're going to support them.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Excuse me, he's really not price high.
It was a good analogy.
Sheila Gressinger, Hampton District. I was going to save this for this evening, but the subject came up, so I'll address it now, which is the compensation package. I think there's been some fussing on one of our social networks, and my problem with that is there used to be a news program, and it was called The Rest of the Story. I think omission is a very disingenuous way to add negativity to something that's being considered. So I went back to some information. In 2016, John McCarthy left his administrative position. He was making $160,000. With cost of living expenses, he would have been making $214,583 this year. When Mr. Curry came on board, he was accepted in 2017 a salary of $135,000. With the cost of living expenses and everything, that's gone up to $172,000, and he's asking for an additional stuff that came from somewhere. I'm not good in budgeting. Goes up to $175,000. So that's $35,000 less than the county would have been paying for John McCarthy if he had indeed stayed. Now, as far as what Mr. Curry has done, I want people to remember, and some people have not been here long enough to know this, but when we were doing our comprehensive plan, it was in limbo for years, and we were not in compliance with the state for this thing. I would go to planning meetings, and there would be people, oh, we want to add this, oh, we want to add that, and the thing would go on forever. When Mr. Curry came, one of the things he did, as I remember it, was recommending the Berkeley group who came in. What did they do? They assessed the situation and they said, here's what we have to do to be in compliance with the state. We need to get these things done. There are other things that can be worked on and possibly put in as an addendum later, but the crux of the matter is to get the thing done. In business, this is what you do. My favorite saying is lead, follow, or get out of the way. I think Mr. Curry took initiative to get us on the proper path with this comprehensive plan. Another huge mess was Flatwood, which was horrible. And I think Mr. Whitson was part of the working on some of that, but it was Mr. Curry that worked and nothing. Rome wasn't built in a day, so it took a while, and it was very uncomfortable, chaotic, to get Flatwood working well. And now it is working well, and we're actually apparently making money on the thing. So for those two things especially, I want to recommend that people think about this and do the correct thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila.
John Capielli, Hampton District. I actually didn't think about saying anything about Mr. Curry's compensation package. I wanted to speak about the contractor's yard and all of that, because as you all know, I'm heavily involved in that. But I've been running a business since 1987. I grew up in a family that all of us have businesses. And when I go out and I talk to customers about jobs, and I tell them, I'm not the cheapest, I'm not the most expensive, but I'm really good at what I do. Now, whether they want to argue with me about what my costs are, there are 4 more people standing in line behind them. I've learned to say, no, I am worth what I am worth, and that is that. I've got 40 years of experience. I have 3 college degrees. I am worth what I am worth. I've bumped heads with Mr. Curry since the first day that he showed up. We get along on some things that we don't. However, he's worth every bit of what we're going to get. I don't see your finding another candidate that would match his experience before he came here. I've watched him do amazing things with budgets. The EMS and police department radio systems and the backup systems, the landfills, finding extra money, helping find extra money for the schools, just on and on and on and on. And it'd be crazy to shortcut over such small amounts of money. And it is. If he was in private industry, he'd be making a whole lot more than that. So I think I'm pretty clear. We'll make it even clearer. Pay the man what he's worth. Negotiate a little bit if you have to, because you just can't do it otherwise. I go to buy stuff and I tell them, you know, you said $5,000. I got to negotiate $100 just because I'll feel better. And sometimes I show up and I tell the people, you know, they want to negotiate. No, there's no negotiations. I'm selling a truck right now. 74-year-old farmer came from Dover and he wants to buy one of my trucks. I said, it's perfect. It's show quality. Well, don't you want to negotiate? Nope. That's it. If I wanted to negotiate, I would have said a different price. And after half an hour of looking at the truck, he comes back to me and goes, you are 100% right. It's a 1970 truck with 3,000 miles on it. That's it. It's done. He'll be picking it up tomorrow. You know how hard it is to talk a 74-year-old watermelon farmer out of money? Okay? I did it. And as far as the yard is concerned and the regulations are concerned, I think that we're back to that 25 acres as a minimum for a house lot size. And I'm at 18 acres. If I add my lot next door, it's 21 acres. If I have to, I'll add. But we need to narrow that down a lot. There isn't a contractor in the county, really, that owns 25 acres. They don't. They're on 5 acres, 3 acres, and there's adjustments for it. But I happen to be one of the bigger ones. And I'll be talking again in a couple hours. Thank you for no commercials. It was a great show.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you. So
All right, I'm not seeing any more hands in the courtroom. I'll go to Zoom. Anyone wishing to speak during public comment, please raise your Zoom hand. All right, not seeing any Zoom hands, I'll go ahead and close public comment.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda. As presented.
We have a motion,
I'll second.
second. Any discussion?
Yes. I have had lots of questions about our July meeting. So I just think for clarity, I'd like, when in the past have we, some folks say we never adjourned that meeting. So I think for clarity purposes, I want to understand, I want folks in the courtroom to understand what exactly happened there, if it has happened in the past, if it's regular, irregular.
Appropriate time for that?
Yeah, I would suggest, that you just pull the minutes off the consent agenda, approve it, and then have a discussion about
Pull it
minutes.
out.
Okay.
Okay? We'll pull that.
So you
So
make
I
it
will adopt the consent agenda with the, without the minutes for adoption.
Mr. Whitson?
Yeah, I'll second that amendment.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right.
Right, so it did happen one other time. I started to look for it and I didn't find it. But the situation where the board continued the regular meeting to another date and then did not actually convene that continued portion of the meeting. I did amend the minutes that are updated or uploaded to add some narrative to help a reader if they're digging through the minutes in several years and they're wondering why they don't see minutes for July 25. And in essence, the Board of Supervisors, you're guided by Chapter 30 of the Rappahannock County Code and Board Policy 820, which is both guide how your board meetings run and how agendas are prepared. And I guess meetings proceed. Part of that Board Policy 820 states that unless a meeting is extended beyond 11 o'clock, it's automatically adjourned. So to the extent to which one might think that the regular meeting wasn't adjourned on the day of the normal meeting, but didn't start the next meeting, it would have adjourned on that continued date at 11. I tend to believe that when you didn't convene that continued meeting, it's adjourned. But if people think that it's still open for some reason, by policy, it adjourned at 11 o'clock that night.
Yep.
And I did just want to apologize because we did cancel relatively late for that meeting. From my perspective, we had just gotten that information that afternoon. That meeting would have consisted of us reviewing that information in the course of the meeting, which to me didn't seem like a productive meeting. And so it was my idea to cancel, and I still think it was a good idea. But I do know that there were 3 to 5 people that didn't get the word. And so I do apologize because I know it does take an effort to brush up on materials.
Yeah, and I do, we, county staff apologize. We did intend to have a note on the outside of the courthouse door, and through a snafu, that didn't happen. And that's normally our intent. We update board docs and put a note on the door so people don't think that you are meeting inside behind a locked door or something. And I heard also there was some consternation about, one of the agenda items was regarding the horse topic. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wanted feedback by the end of the month, and because the next meeting was after the end of the month, that topic didn't make it onto the next regular meeting because it was no longer germane due to time. The other items were added to that next meeting.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
So now we need a motion to approve the minutes.
Yes.
Donna, do you want to make a motion to adopt the minutes?
Sure, I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes.
Ms. Share the wealth, I'll second that.
Okay. We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Now we got presentations.
Yeah, presentations from the, whatever order you want. Want to go in the order that's on the agenda?
Yeah, might as well. Childhood Cancer Awareness Month proclamation. There's Miss Lenny. I'm gonna have a lot of water right now. Proclamation Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Come on up. Whereas childhood cancer is the leading cause of death by disease in children, and whereas 1 in 285 children in the United States will be diagnosed by their 20th birthday, with the average age of diagnosis being 6 years old, and whereas 46 children per day, or 16,790 children per year, are diagnosed with cancer in the United States, with 80% of childhood cancer patients being diagnosed late and with metastatic disease. And whereas communities benefit from hundreds of nonprofit organizations nationwide that are helping children with cancer and helping their families cope through educational, emotional, and financial support. And whereas researchers and healthcare professionals work diligently and intentionally, dedicating their expertise to treat and cure children with cancer. And whereas too many children, including Rappahannock County children, are affected by this deadly disease, and more must be done to raise awareness and find a cure. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors that September 2024 shall be Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Further, we call upon all residents to join us in observing this month and raising awareness for a cause that deeply impacts families in our community and in communities across the nation. The Glow Gold campaign in Virginia encourages the placement of gold lights on properties during September to showcase support for childhood cancer patients and survivors. Adopted this 4th day of September, 2024.
We just wanted to thank you all for making this happen today, and to introduce just really quickly the few people that we brought here. These are 3 families that are impacted by childhood cancer. We first have Mrs. Viviana Teixeira, and her daughter, Mari Michelle, was diagnosed with melanoma at age 17, and through a progression, melanoma is the #1 killer of children, or the #1 cancer for young adults, and her daughter did succumb to that in just last year when she was 20 years old. And Mrs. Viviana and her husband are both educators in our county, live over in Front Royal, but they are a very closely affected family, obviously, in this county. The second we have here is Mrs. Tara Anabanet and her daughter Mayla. Tara was a childhood cancer survivor herself. She was diagnosed with leukemia in 1993 when she was 11 years old, and due to the effects of the radiation and chemotherapy she's had some lifelong medical issues, which 2/3 of kids will have lifelong medical issues. So we're having kids live longer now, but because we see these the effects of these treatments, there's only been, in the past, since 1980, there's only been 10 different drugs, less than 10 that have been developed for childhood cancer. And then you have Annie, and Annie just finished her treatments for leukemia last year, so she's also now in the survivor record. And as Tara's become a great advocate, and so has Viviana, we just want to let you guys know that there's many families here in the county, that this small little area that are going through this, and we really appreciate it. There'll be events on September 10th. There's a volleyball game here at the school, a Dig Gold volleyball game, because children are more precious than gold. So gold is the color of the ribbon. And then on September 28th, sorry, John Jackson, we're not going to take away from you guys. we're hoping to capitalize on the farm tour and John Jackson's involvement of everybody, and have a kind of a free lunch, trying to get a Better Together grant to be able to raise funds for a family that's going through cancer right now. We have a family currently that's going through it. So we appreciate all you guys' support and help. This has been a great community with so small but so supportive. So thank you. And if anybody would like any information about Go Gold, I have a flyer, or there will be stuff online. There was something in the paper about it last week too. Thank you.
Thank you, Lenny.
John Jackson Day. Resolution of appreciation and condolences to the family of Roger Roach. Unfortunately, the family couldn't be here today, but Jackie Estes is here to receive it for events, I believe, Washington. Yep. Whereas Roger Roach served the citizens of Rappahannock County, dedicating countless hours to the Washington Volunteer Fire and Rescue Company, WVFR. And whereas he served from 1978 to 2004, more than a quarter century as WVFR's chief, and was the first paramedic at WVFR. And whereas Chief Roach was respected for his many innovative and progressive approaches to improving WVFR's EMS and firefighting capabilities, championing the transition from station wagon style ambulances to a box van type, and advocating for the use of compressed air foam system to enhance fire suppression efforts. And whereas Chief Roach was a dedicated EMS trainer and mentor at WVFR and in Prince William County, where he served 25 years as a paramedic with the Prince William County Department of Fire and Rescue. Now therefore be it resolved that the members of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors extend their sincerest gratitude for Chief Roach's many years of service to the Rappahannock community and offer their deepest condolences to his family. Be it further resolved that this resolution be spread across the minutes of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors so all citizens may reflect upon the service and accomplishments of this dedicated citizen adopted this 4th day of September 2024.
Memorial service for Roger is September 28th at 10 o'clock at the high school. And the reception at, of course, the fire department down.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jackie.
All right. Proclamation and celebration of John Jackson Day, September 28, 2024. Whereas every last weekend in September, people travel from far and wide to Rappahannock County for the John Jackson Festival and celebrate his distinctive self-taught finger-picking blues guitar style. And whereas John Jackson was born and raised in Woodville, Virginia in 1924, this year marks his centennial birthday celebration. And whereas he performed in concert halls and festivals around the world, including the South Lawn of the White House, becoming the most accomplished Piedmont blues musician of his time, and whereas he was awarded the National Heritage Fellowship, America's highest recognition for folk and traditional artists, and whereas his music is still enjoyed and imitated around the world today, especially cherished in Rappahannock County by his family, friends, and fans. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors declares September 28th, 2024 to be John Jackson Day. Be it further proclaimed that this proclamation be spread across the minutes of the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors for all citizens to reflect upon the accomplishments and musical gifts of our native son, who is a cornerstone of Rappahannock County's cultural legacy. And we have 3, I think, people receiving recognition.
This is John Jackson's guitar. I've got the key to the highway, booked and I'm bound to go. I'm gonna leave from here running, walking most too slow. Thank you.
Mr. Jackson, for all your support, Gary and Bonnie too, they've been real supportive. That was my funding for this, and writing letters of support, and we really appreciate that. Thanks so much.
Thank
you all.
very much.
We do have some
Thank you,
of
Dolly.
our committee members here with us this afternoon, so we thank them for being here with us to accept this. And I do have a little something to give you all in honor of this. I have had some guitar picks made especially for the festival, celebrating his 100th birthday.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's
Well,
so
we
cool.
pray the sun will be out all weekend.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Bobby.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Make sure.
That's super cool.
But this doesn't happen every meeting.
Everybody's on our job if that happened every meeting.
Anita's here every meeting, God bless her, so.
Thanks a lot. That's cool.
Thank you so much, Bobby.
You're welcome.
All right,
We've gotten some cool stuff at board meetings before,
but not that.
no offense to Sheila, who gives us some cool stuff occasionally, but this is pretty cool. All right.
All righty.
Why don't we just take
We'll take
We'll take a 5-minute break. Sounds good. Recess, that is.
Excellent. Thank you.
We're on to appointments.
Yes, you have currently 2 vacancies on the Agricultural Forestal District Advisory Committee. There was one at your last meeting, but I did finally make contact with Cliff Miller, I think someone said the Wiser. And he said he's just not here enough, and he felt it would be better filled by somebody more locally. So you have those 2 opportunities. I don't have any applications, but I do understand there's an individual who's interested.
There is, I've spoken with Mr. Kirk Davis, and, oh, sorry.
That's okay.
He asked me to sit back so the camera can be seen, and then, I've spoken with Mr. Kirk Davis, and he, verbally has agreed to take, to take this on. And I believe he's indicated as such.
Yeah, he said as much to me. If the board is of mind to appoint Mr. Davis, you can do so. I just ask that you make sure you append to the end of that to waive any whatever the word is.
We'll cover it all, Jerry, don't worry.
Informalities?
Formalities and informalities.
Informalities with the appointment process?
And non-conformist.
Non-inconformalities?
It is Kirk Davis.
Yeah.
He's a
I make that
non-conformist.
motion in what you said.
Yep.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. And you have a second one, but does anybody else have a representative?
You know, I've found in the past that advertising for this didn't work, so I suggest that you just continue to reach out to your constituents. They have to be a landowner. They may be a landowner involved in agricultural or forestal activities, but they don't have to be because you already have 4 that fill that role.
All right. Next is the Rappahannock County Recreational Facilities Authority.
You have 1 vacancy on this due to resignation. That term for the individual that resigned would have ended in on June 30 of 2026. It's my recommendation that when you appoint somebody, you appoint them to a term that ends June 30, 2028 to more evenly stagger the terms. There's 8 individuals, so you really should have 2 coming up every year. And a few years ago, things got kind of messed up, and we ended up having a mass end date, and it causes continuity issues on the committee. You do have an application from Pat Kenny, former Shenandoah National Park Superintendent, who
Is
I
he
guess.
qualified?
I don't know. I don't know.
He may be a natural. You just don't know.
But as with the last item, well, he did submit an application. He's not present in the room today, so that is one of the things in your policy. So you if there's an interest to appoint him, you should waive the informalities in the appointment process for this one
Well,
too.
I would first like to say that the gentleman who retired, Mr. George Gardner, was an absolute powerhouse on the Rec Authority Board. We passed we adopted a resolution in honor of him that Chairwoman Burr wrote, and it was amazing to have that kind of energy on the park board. So I just want to thank George for his service. He leaves enormous shoes. Thank you, George. In terms of Mr. Kenny, I cannot think of a more qualified, more dedicated individual or board in this county to which he could put his skill set to use. He's one of my constituents, and I would like to waive all formal informalities and non-conforming formalities and move to.
And your ordinance requires these appointments to be made by resolution, which I did prepare the resolution and attach it for you, so.
I will move to adopt provided resolution amended to include.
And that does include an expiration date on June 30, 2028?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And I'll second with the hope that he restores bison and other native animals to Rappahannock County Park.
We need some more land. Yeah. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Roll call.
Roll call vote. Ms. Comer?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Whitson?
Aye.
Mr. Carney?
Aye.
And I also. And Becky, thank you for all you do.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Old business, we are on Life Pack 35 funding.
Darren.
Madam Chair, ladies, gentlemen of the board, thank you for taking a few minutes to hear me. Just quickly, I do want to state, my tenure here has been relatively short, but this has been the best meeting ever. Hopefully we'll keep it that way. No, just taking the time, and I appreciate it from my role as the Emergency Services Coordinator for you to take the time to recognize anytime ordinary citizens cross over and become extraordinary. From the folks at Flint Hill who, look, they were 12 months ago, we're all ordinary citizens, to what's happened to Ben at Settles. Just absolutely remarkable things. So it's been a great meeting.
Good.
I come to you on behalf of not only the county organization of 1,400, but for our volunteer entities. We were hoping to transition from the Life Pack 15, which is a 16 or 17-year-old device, to the new Life Pack 35. I know we've probably spoke at nauseum at the last board meeting on the subject matter. I submitted my request along with some substantiation, kind of expanded on my discussion last meeting when we talked about cardiac survival and as it relates to compression factor and some of the key benefits of this device. Following what I felt was the board's instruction, I reached out to the individual agencies that had expressed an interest and asked them to provide some type of letter expressing both the desire and some type of statement of need that doing so would cause some financial strain within the organization. I have attached letters while I went into board docs from each of those organizations. And I know also a letter of support had come out from Chief Summers, who's here, to make sure he didn't run away. He's here with me today. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sure, thanks a lot for polling all the agencies and then also for your ongoing effort with the vendor who sells the life packs to kind of keep us in the mix for available volume discounts. So I just had a couple of questions so that I understand and also just for the record. So a life pack, I think, for those of us who are kind of new to EMS terminology and the EMS world, it would be useful to know, is this piece of equipment, is it a basic life support piece of equipment? Is it an advanced life support piece of equipment? Is it both?
It is probably the one key item on an ambulance that is used on every call.
Okay.
BLS providers use it to provide patient assessment or bolster their patient assessment. It collects vital signs and stores them. They also use it as an AED, and it functions as an automatic AED. One of the new things about this device, it also functions as an AED for pediatric patients as opposed to having to carry a separate AED. And ALS providers, it really comes into its own. It has the ability, and very much so the current device does too. I don't want to overstate that, but it does have the ability to provide manual defibrillation at the direction of a paramedic so they can set the joules or watt seconds tailored to the patient's needs. It can function as a pacemaker, an external pacemaker, and then obviously it becomes the record keeping or the log of every action that takes place. Every time we give a drug, it's entered into that. All of our actions, it allows us to communicate with the hospital most effectively. One advent or bonus for this device is it allows the hospital to live stream so they can watch the patient's EKGs and vitals trending live as they're going on. That's one of the new developments with the LifePak 35 as well.
Okay, and then I guess my related question is it fair to assume that any licensed EMT in our system, any nationally licensed EMT, would that person be fully qualified to use LifePak 35s in their full functionality?
Not at their full functionality. They would use it and receive a great deal of benefit. Any EMS provider, like I said, we use it on every call. It's the first thing that's hooked to a patient. But there are more, it has an expanded area for advanced life support providers.
Okay, and then my last question goes to your ongoing discussions with Stryker, the vendor that we may purchase these from. I just wonder if you could summarize for us the volume discount that would be achieved if we were to make this purchase at this time, and any of the other benefits that we would realize by buying these as more than a one-off. In this case, I think the proposal is for 6.
So we initially had a discussion, I think in May, pre-release to the FDA's approval of the LifePak 35 device, and he had given us at that point LifePak 15 pricing, and said that they would honor that as long as we entered into an agreement before the FDA made the release. A week later, they made the release. He's allowed us to keep kicking the can down the road, thankfully. It started out with just a one-on-one, and I didn't want to be a benefit of what I felt was a good financial deal or windfall and not share that with all of our volunteer partners. So we asked him to open up a few months so we could make the rounds and talk to anyone that was interested. It is currently at LifePak 15 pricing, which represents a 20% off of list. So if we don't move forward, we'll absorb a 20% increase on both the list price and the maintenance contracts for that device. The two things that I don't have real certainty on, the current trade-in value for every LifePak in our system is $8,000. They've already reduced that to $6,000, but they've agreed to honor that for this purchase. And any unit that is under 3 years old, they throw an additional $6,000 in. So we're maximizing the effectiveness we still have a great deal of trade-in value in the devices, and we're getting pre-launch or pre-release pricing, which represents 20% across the board. And then there's the huge advantage of being able to pay our maintenance cost up front. It's roughly 18% savings in just paying that upfront chunk as opposed to biannual, which historically is what most of the companies have been doing. That cost, by the way, has been borne by the Fire Levy Board in the past as an ongoing maintenance expense.
Okay, and then the total pricing that's discussed in our agenda, it seems like it's an adjusted total outlay after accounting for those companies that are going to bear some of the cost of the new LifePaks. And I just wonder, should we, just for our full understanding and transparency, should we be further adjusting downward that final price by $36,000 to account for the trade-in value of 6 units?
The trade-in values are based in this.
Oh, they are?
Yeah, at the top it's broken down with the base cost less trade-in.
Okay, I see.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the attached memo does have a breakdown for each company.
Okay.
The list price, the department contribution, the trade-in, and then the cost of remaining costs. And then there's a summary table at the end.
That's my fault. I'm looking at the summary information because that don't like having a bunch of devices
I
open in
understand.
front of me, so.
They did
Okay,
also
it's-
throw in free shipping, which was initially an $8,000 cost on the first estimate
Wow.
from Washington State. And then we had some discussion back and forth whether the need for printers, the older providers really, it's hard to break a habit. Most of them wanted them. It's a $2,500 option. It's never been an option before. Ultimately, they came back and provided the $2,500 printers across the board, but no cost.
Okay.
So do Washington and Amosville not want them? Do they have them? Jack, it sounds like you're saying that they have one and that when the life is up, he wants us to get them one. Did I hear that correctly?
I'm not sure of the dates. I know Amosville's are both at the 8-year mark currently, which is typically
They have life pack 15s.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, not 35s, right?
Yeah.
So they have 15s that are in use.
Right, but they haven't expressed an interest. Both Washington and Amosville don't want them right now.
I know that Chief Carter has said that they want to try to maximize the life of their devices they have currently. They think they can get up to 2 more years out of them. They have a set in place replacement plan for all their company's service goods. So they were going to stick to that. Washington, I've had some discussion. They had said they were considering buying another. They didn't want to make the transition to buy both without buying both at the same time or moving just one up. They were probably going to replace their 8-year-old unit as a trade-in. And I met with them and expressed that if they do that, they could certainly take our unit and pay the trade-in cost, which would be substantially less. It'd be 30% of the cost of them buying a new LifePak 15 would be to take on one of our, a 3-year-old unit. So they expressed they would do that. It would change this. It wouldn't change the total number because they would replace the cost of whatever our outlay or what we would have received on trade-in values. But our salesman said we can clean that up when we get through this.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so just one of the downsides, and we talked about this a little bit when we met with Castleton, is that, and there's a non-practitioner talking, the LifePak 15s have certain leads and plug-in things, and the 35s are different, right? And
It
so
would be
if there's
most
a patient
advantageous.
That's wired up for a 15 and they have to kind of be handed off to a company that has a 35, you can't just plug and play.
Currently, when a patient's on leads, cardiac leads, we have the ability, we can unplug the cables and just plug those cables into the transferred provider when the other providers come on, so you wouldn't have to move or undo all the leads. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen, and it is an advantage. It would be the most advantage for the entire system to move at once. I certainly couldn't argue that point. The question is, and this is probably like every one of you have made at some point in your life, when is the time to trade in my car and purchase new? You have to look at cost of ownership. The cost of ownership increases as it hits a certain age. At 8 years, the LifePaks are no longer covered on a service contract. You have to pay out of pocket for any repairs. They do obviously get inspected for service use annually or biannually to make sure they're functional. And also, at this point, we're just at a point where we feel we can maximize our trade-in values to put toward the new device. Historically, they have run a 9% cost increase annually. They did tell me they wouldn't be one this January, but we probably would expect that next January. So with the disappearing values and, or at least diminishing values of trade-ins, coupled with a cost increase, 12 months from now, and losing the introductory or pre-launch pricing, I've, at least for our organization and the 4 chiefs that I've spoken to, all felt that this was the time to move forward.
Can I ask about the one paragraph in our write-up today that says the Fire and Rescue EMS Services Agreement envisions that the county will fund 100% of operational funding for volunteer fire and rescue companies, with capital funding left to the volunteer companies using their EMS cost recovery and other sources of revenue. County administration has recommended and continues to recommend that taxpayer system funding from the county that is above and beyond the operational funding contemplated by the services agreement be financial needs based. I mean, that's the hiccup for me today, and it especially resonates when I realize that some of the departments are paying 50%, which I think is a good precedent if we're going to set a precedent for everyone to have skin in the game. And some of the companies haven't offered to pay anything, but there's no justification for why they aren't able to pay anything. And I mean, I know it is an end of September deadline, but if we're going to set a precedent and do this, which is what we're proposing to do today, I think that we should have clear guidance as to why we would expect some companies to pay half and other companies not to pay at all.
I did not look at the details of their financial pictures. I took them at their word. I do know, when I met with each company, I said it's a goodwill measure to put what can you afford to put toward this. I agree with your sentiment of having some skin in the game. But I do recognize that organizations all have very different financial pictures. They represent different districts that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds of their base. Some of them have a larger membership and the ability to fundraise more effectively. So while we all have the same cost, they may not have the same resources to help meet those needs. I do recognize that.
I understand what you're saying and I agree, but I'm saying there ought to be a measure by which we make these decisions that can be consistent going forward. And there's not a measure by which we can gauge who can afford to pay and who can't afford to pay, to make a decision when some pay half and when some pay 100%.
There was a brief discussion at the last meeting. I thought I followed the intent of the body. I'm always happy to provide a measure, but someone has to give me a ruler.
Well, and I understand what you're saying, but it was also a new agenda item for us, and not everything clicks in place as we discuss it. But as in reviewing the details and realizing that some are footing half and some are footing none, that's a slippery slope for me as a supervisor.
I understand.
Well, I would have to disagree. I don't think that in this case we need a bright line rule. I heard Mr. Atkins say that they're going to need a new one. I don't know this for sure, but Amosville has a lot of money in the bank. And if we had a bright line rule, it could lean towards them paying for the whole thing. I'm not sure that I would agree with that, though. And I think that your approach, which I'm hearing, and I wasn't at the meeting, which is, what do you guys think you can offer? And they caucused and they figured it out. I think for this context and for what we're talking about buying, for me, does work. And in this situation, I feel comfortable making this decision without having a bright line rule for me.
I think I would be foolish to presume to speak for Mr. Jack Atkins, but I do know that some companies plan to fund these in the future with grants.
Yeah,
which is also totally acceptable and great.
But that's a different discussion.
I'm just saying, if we start treating different people differently, we are creating issues for the future.
Well, so you've been to the Castleton breakfasts, which, by the way, are amazing.
I think they've stopped them.
They do them in rotating cycles where they do more and sometimes they do less, but they can only make so much money when they do that, and they do try. I mean, I'm just putting in my 2 cents for Castleton because they've requested full funding from the county, and so I'm just, I'm in their corner thinking to myself, I know they need it.
And we heard the same, Darren and I heard the same thing.
I'm not disagreeing on a personality or case-by-case basis. My concern is, as an overarching policy of the Board of Supervisors, if we're going to start funding fire and rescue needs in this manner, we ought to have a policy that shows needs before we do the funding. And it ought to be uniform for everyone.
I think I may have brought it up, and I'm not sure if I did, so forgive me. But I think there is an opportunity for us to have, and not for this, I'm in support for both Chester Gap and Company 4 and Sperryville, the folks that need it, but have some sort of capital grant application form or something that doesn't have to be like your typical grant application, but something that gives the data to all of us so that we can see what the request is and why. So I think that's something the county could probably work up for future items. To me, the Life Pack is, and I'm so sorry the other companies aren't interested because I've just gone through this process. We precepted on multiple units. And what this will do, and I have to say, folks that rode with Amosville, I rode with Washington on several occasions, they were great to ride with. But to have different technology is going to make precepting a little bit more difficult. And this particular technology, I believe all companies should have, not just the ones that have applied or written a letter. For the life-saving possibilities, for the new ALS level of care that it can provide, just everything about the technology. A stretcher, you got to have a stretcher. Everybody's got one. If it breaks, I don't know, you go through grants with Stryker or somebody. I understand a stretcher saves your back. This saves lives. And I look at that differently, and I want to have everybody in the community feel confident that no matter what company shows up, they're going to get the best. And I'm sorry that we had two companies that chose not to do that yet.
And one thing I'll add, we heard about the cardiac arrest at Settles today. And last week, I believe it was Thursday night, there was a single car vehicular accident on 522 that was, by any description, horrific. And what I've heard from the volunteers and professionals who went to that call and what we heard today about the call at Settles is that despite the topographic challenges of our rural locality, you had two potentially catastrophic events that occurred. And because of our awesome volunteers and our awesome paid people and having the right equipment, lives were saved in those cases, or at least extended. And this is such a basic piece of equipment, and I'm, again, like as Gary said better than me, I am not a practitioner by any stretch. I think anything we can do in our rural system to help our volunteers, and I'll take the heat for the one who said to the Public Safety Committee, here are 5 ideas that I think we should extend to our volunteer companies. So I will take the heat for putting this forward as an idea. And we don't all have to agree that it's the right idea at the right time, but I think it is the right idea for the reasons Ms. Donahue just expressed. And it is the right idea because I heard just last night about that vehicle accident. And what I heard was, thank goodness we had the equipment that we did. And that included
People as well.
and people, volunteers, ALS 1400, everyone who pitched in on that. And that person, when they got him to the hospital, the ER physician said to the medics, if you hadn't done everything that you did on the scene, this person would not have survived. And if we can, despite our rural topographic and distance and volunteer system challenges, still prevail and still save lives in situations like this, I think we're headed in a really good direction. And I think a basic piece of equipment like this, where you've done the groundwork to secure significant discounts, we cannot miss this opportunity. So I'll go ahead and I will put forward, and it might lead to more discussion, I'm going to put forward a motion that we award the purchase of 6 LifePak 35 devices with the identified cost share provided by the volunteer EMS agencies that are identified in our agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Yeah, so I've taken the time to speak to a few of our fire rescue and emergency services experts in the county, and I tell constituents all the time, I lean on our experts, and we're lucky we have quite a few in our county. And the one thing that everyone I spoke to agreed on was that this technology was good. The one thing they all agreed on was, yeah, eventually we'll have this. Just some folks have decided that they're not ready to make this purchase. We have some companies that really do, they have a talent for leveraging the grant monies, and I applaud them for that and
Absolutely.
encourage it and wish that everyone could get as good at it as they are. Right now, I don't feel like when I consider that and then I look at 4 other companies asking for help, I don't feel like I should stand in the way of those folks getting what they need. Having said all of that, I also do not think it is an unreasonable thing at all moving forward to submit a letter of request, and this is why I need your help there. That's not unreasonable, and I think good practice. So that's where I am.
And I would just add that I commend the companies that have chosen to go a different route. I don't think we ought to be castigating people for not choosing to purchase this equipment. They're sticking to their capital improvement plan, and they're choosing to self-finance, and that's to be commended as well. So, and I do want to also recognize that those companies have gotten additional training from Stryker, so they are familiar with
Very much
with
so.
the Life Pack 35s. So there is not a danger of a disconnect with training, and they're able to bridge that gap nimbly and offer what the other companies do. So I don't want there to be further division among the fire and rescue companies. And I hope that we will be able to work out a way to address everyone's needs even-handedly and uniformly so that it's not one-off discussions like this.
Please know I respect their decision, and, you know, but eventually, everyone's coming to the end. Eventually, everyone will have to go to this device. It was just, speaking for our organization, it was the time to do it financially. And then just a word of caution, if you move forward with it, some type of grant program, just know that a simple snapshot of assets at hand may not represent a true picture of what they have in front of them. Equipment costs have been incredible. Ambulances are now over $400,000. Fire trucks are well over $1 million. So while they do have a lot of finances, they may have some finances or capital available. They may have commitments. So I certainly applaud organizations that have well thought out capital plans.
I'd want to say that the reason that I don't want to have a bright line rule here is because I want Amosville to get this, and I would pay for it from the county general fund. It doesn't matter to me that they may have more money because of this reason.
Right, they
Apparatus
have
are
other
so
things, yeah.
expensive, they've saved for it, and if they have to shell out for it, I'm not going to penalize anybody for that.
Right.
And so in this sense, I haven't been involved in these discussions, but you have, and in this sense, you know, if folks are asking us for this stuff that you're saying, I mean, this is the way it's moving, and everybody's gonna, I just want to keep it open so that whoever needs it, we can get it. So anyway, I do support it.
All right, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, sir.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot
all.
for all your work.
Thank you. Thanks for the pick.
And you don't need to go to Seattle to pick these up, I guess, no?
I'm waiting.
You're not picking them up.
I would say
Let's change that. You may not,
$8,000
you're not
shipping,
allowed
please
to go to Seattle.
$3,000 I was willing to.
I'll give you some United miles.
All right, Ms. Comer, I think you wanted this one to stay on the agenda, divided highway wrong-way drivers.
Yes, at our last meeting, we had a constituent bring up her concerns, and I think recently someone had been seen driving the wrong way, and then was it I think August 29th? It was very recently. One of our deputies stopped someone driving the wrong way. So I had a chat with Mr. Nesbitt at VDOT, and I also believe some of my colleagues did as well. We hammered him on one day all about Rappahannock. So this is really on the agenda to keep an eye on it so it doesn't fall away from discussion, so that we're reminded if we're not getting what we need to from VDOT, if we don't feel like we're well supported, that we all constantly ask for the updates. I know that you can look at the plans there that I believe we discussed.
Did he have anything new to
He
add?
did not have anything new to add, not with me on this.
And if you've traveled in the area and noticed as I was going back and forth to Amosville Refuse and Recycling Site, that the signage as depicted on those plans has been going up, intersection by intersection by intersection. The easiest way to see that is that you'll see, in addition to do not enter, you'll see wrong way signs in sequence. So you're seeing those pop up at the intersections. And I noted in the narrative that on one of those trips, looking at the location of Narmada, and then the next intersection up is Seven Ponds. And so I suggested maybe they should look at that one too and improve the signage there. The first real obvious place from Benvenue down or Narmada to see better signage.
I know we've talked about this so many times, but and they have this in Canada and in Europe. When you go the wrong way, they'll have reflectors reflecting the other way.
Well, they do. We do now.
We do.
The center line reflectors are red if you go the wrong way.
Yeah, but they have them so they go across the whole road,
Right.
so
Yeah.
you can really see it if you go from the other
So
way.
Mr. Whitson pressed VDOT during a public safety committee meeting to look at pilot programs and outside of their
Painting the
normal
road.
operations, and we weren't
Mr.
able
Whitson
to-
had no influence over their decision-making. One thing, Ms. Comer, while you were talking, just as an idea, and Gary knows about this, I complained to, he's no longer on the board, but I complained to Supervisor Trumbo in Fauquier County, who I think you know. I complained to him because my children go to school in the Plains, and all these families going to the Plains, we're going through this ridiculous intersection that many of us know at Old Tavern Road and 17. It's crazy. And there have been accidents, and then some former Wakefield school students were in an auto accident at that intersection. And so I complained to him. He said, "Thank you for your complaint. Here's what I'm going to do." And through VDOT, with some kind of, and you might know the terminology for this, it was like a citizen, it was a formal VDOT citizen advisory group or panel, and we actually met multiple times. It was during the pandemic, so it was by Zoom, to kind of hear what VDOT was proposing to do for that intersection. Now, I recognize that's an intersection, this is an entire highway through a county, but it might be worth asking Mr. Nesbitt, and he'll know about this because he was involved in it with Supervisor Trumbo. Just tell him, hey, I heard you did something like this for the Old Tavern Roads, Route 17 intersection. Could we do something similar where we bring, because we have many citizens, including your constituent who spoke very eloquently to us, who want to be heard on this issue, and because people like me raising it directly with VDOT has not worked, maybe critical mass from citizens will make a difference. So we should look to see if VDOT would be willing to convene such a group to study this. And I think, in my mind's eye, and also based on direct experience, the biggest issue is out your way in Amosville, where I've had 2 close calls
It is.
on the rollers.
I'll be happy to explore that, and I'll reach out to Supervisor Trumbo as well and see what nuggets I can glean from how he made it happen, and then
Yeah,
reach out to
I think
Mr. Nesbitt.
that's a good idea.
I talked to Supervisor Comer about this the other day, and I always like the example at Tiger Valley Road, where there's a line down the center of the intersection and a stop sign on the far side of the intersection and on the near side of the intersection, and you could also put divided highway signs there, and that sort of signals to people that there is an expectation that they cross to that point and get on the other side of the road. I would say it's not overly burdensome, and it's also not an eyesore, and doesn't create more and more visual clutter, like I think so many of these ideas would. Just keep it simple and replicate things that are already working, and it would be interesting to know the data for the Tiger Valley intersection before and after that change was made, because it wasn't always that way. And it must be that way for a reason. But I would also like to see the intersection down by Flatwood there. That has to be one of the busiest intersections in the county. And to have a straight down the middle and a stop sign on each side might help. And there sure are a lot of accidents at that intersection too.
Yeah.
There is a second study that VDOT just wrapped up, which involved the secondary approaches to the primaries, which I think would address some of these things. And so that output will go to the Public Safety Committee the next time they meet, which will be coming up here shortly.
And that had to do with, like, for example, in your district where that new turn lane was put in, I always forget the name of that, Holly Springs.
Yeah.
At Holly Springs, if you have somebody coming up to the stop sign from the south as they approach 211 under foggy conditions, or from Benvenue under foggy conditions onto 211, it's happened where people don't even see the stop sign and all of a sudden find themselves in the middle of 211. So I think that was really the intent of that study. But yeah, maybe all combined, we can advance things a little bit.
Well, some places are more ripe for a flashing light than others. And that's, I'm sure, a discussion for another day.
Flashing lights in Rappahannock County, I'd say a discussion.
Well,
for
there's one at Massey's, right? I mean,
yeah, no, that's true.
it's not unprecedented. It's just that you don't really want them where people live or where they're
Right.
intrusive to people in the evening and overnight.
And rumble strips are problematic also because they're loud.
Because they're right there.
I was driving somewhere the other day and I saw small rumble strips, but it was as a warning on approach to a stop sign.
Correct.
And there were some very small rumble strips.
They were, like that big on either side, weren't they?
And it was a series of them, and they have them up in the park as you go up too. There's some changes, I think, in the texture of the road to where you know that there's a change about to happen. But I mean, we certainly need it to be safe for all kinds of vehicles to drive as well.
We'll keep this discussion going until the sheriff stops writing about wrong-way drivers.
Well,
Many
and-
thanks to Deputy Meade, that has to be a harrowing stop to make to chase a wrong-way driver.
I just want to point out, I've just got to say it, that driver was coming from Warrenton, not Narmada.
Right.
And
Right.
they were impaired, and there's no medicine, was probably gonna
Yeah.
fix that.
Yep. All right, county offices network modernization.
This is really a quick update for you. I gave you a pretty big information packet last month, and with a significant cost attached to providing a modern network for all of our county offices, between our county offices, to leverage VoIP to replace our very old phone system that doesn't work well, is very expensive, and also allow us to have modern camera system. I've been back and forth with the company that provided that pricing, and asked them for more granular breakdown of how they got there and how it aligns with the state contract that they're leveraging. And I've also talked to another company, and they're working right now on building parallel pricing. So more to come on that. Happy to answer any questions, but just we continue to work on this important project.
Thank you.
Thank you. County construction and renovation.
I don't know if you want me to go through all these. I've put a little narrative in for each of the projects that's happening. I think I've alerted the board behind the scenes on a lot of this. We did submit the pre-application for the Virginia 250 Preservation Fund as authorized by the board at the last meeting. Basically applied for the maximum we could leverage the existing funding provided by the county. I don't think there's enough money in the state fund to go that far, but we'll see how it goes. Cloud Homes was in town the end of last week and met with all the stakeholders for the courthouse, circuit court judges, et cetera, in this room. And they're moving forward to modify the program that was developed under the Wiley Wilson to make sure it's up to date, make sure it's valid in the eyes of all the current stakeholders. And surveyors have been out, and you might see them out there today, to nail everything down and get this to the next point. The next meeting of all the Planning Oversight Committee is on the 9th, is the tentative date, where the architectural firm will loop back to all those parties to reflect back what they said, to make sure they heard what the stakeholders said.
How's the garage?
The garage is really on the side burner until I can free up time. But the engineer that's been working with Sperryville has agreed to work with me on that project to get the site plan done and the utility work done, drawn up.
On the garage, I know that part of the garage plan is the pharmaceutical, storage. What are we, assuming the garage isn't ready by November, what are we gonna do about that?
Tonight, I think it's tonight. Whenever there's an agreement with Sperryville, who's offered to allow their building to be used for the interim period for storage of the pharmaceuticals.
Perfect.
It's a big deal.
And everything else is rolling along. The one new project on the list, which you funded through contingency fund today, is the correction of the ADA parking lot at the Sperryville Fire Voting Precinct. I understand that many years ago, county staff went around to all of the sites to get this issue resolved and didn't quite resolve the issue at that site.
County cemeteries.
Oh, and I did, just if you haven't had a chance
Sorry,
to
yep.
get down there, I did make a little picture. So there's Stephen. So I just wanted to show you this kind of neat, no electricity needed. This is our two buried tanks for leachate. And so these little floats just pop up just by floating so that from afar you can see when the tank is full or half full.
Cool.
That way we didn't have to run power, we don't have to mess with any of that stuff. It's kind of ingenious setup. Yeah.
And then they get pumped or?
And then they get pumped about once a month.
Where does it go?
Right now to City of Lynchburg, to the wastewater treatment plant.
Really, why are we down there?
Not all wastewater treatment plants like leachate because it doesn't include a lot of biological oxygen bands. You know, like,
Yeah, beauty.
yeah, so
Yeah.
not everybody likes it. But they will take it, and we're happy for them to do that.
By ticket, do you mean we pay them to take it?
Yes. We pay a tank truck to pick it up at our site, drive it to that site, to the tune of, $100,000 a year, and which should really be dropped down to somewhere around 20 now. And that's the beauty of that project.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
There was a discussion about cemeteries at the last meeting. Bonnie had this inkling that we had some information, and it is posted to the county website. Maureen Harris, if you know her, she's just a voracious researcher. She had put together this document, Historic Properties in Rappahannock County. That document, which is linked, if you click About Us on our website, is linked there, has a lot of information on cemeteries in the county.
Great.
So good background for those who might want to go digging.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to.
Unintended?
I'd like to, I'd like to come back to that sometime in the not too distant future, just talk about at least maybe a trial run of some kind of county government, small grant fund to see if there's interest from various cemetery organizations to seek assistance. Maybe a more formal discussion about what we can do or propose to do to support the formal and informal groups that manage our cemeteries in the county, but we can talk about that another time.
New commercial activity.
We'll move on.
Okay.
Nothing to report.
Fire levy board, necessity discussion.
Sure, I'll open and just say that I talked to Mr. Curry and Ms. Donahue and Mr. Carney about this over the last few months, and I've heard from some chiefs that they find the process an additional burden to have to pull all the information together and to attend a fire levy board meeting. And then also in the lead up to the recent chiefs meeting that I attended, Mr. Curry and Ms. Jewell pulled together information on the funding that we are providing to our volunteer fire and rescue companies, which if I remember correctly is somewhere in the range of $1.5 million annually, which is being processed through the fire levy fund. And I started thinking broadly about, again, following the theme of how do we reduce the unnecessary administrative burdens on our volunteer fire and rescue companies. And then number two, recognizing that $1.5 million of taxpayer funds are flowing to our volunteer fire and rescue companies through the fire levy board. And considering $1.5 million lines up not too distantly behind the school system in terms of our local contribution, well, somewhat distantly, but it's a significant number in our annual budget. I at least wanted to raise the question and initiate a discussion. And I think Mr. Curry will provide us some background on how we got here. But the question is, to the extent that our county staff and Mr. Curry in particular are already reviewing and preparing the financial data that the fire levy board reviews, and given the significant expenditure of taxpayer funds in our volunteer fire and rescue companies, and given further that some have expressed that this is an additional administrative meeting burden that they wish they did not have, would it make sense for us to just cut to the chase and improve the efficiency with which reimbursement requests are reviewed? And frankly, we're seeing county staff credit card receipts every month, and it seems to me that we might want to have our eyes more directly on the funds that are going to our fire and rescue companies, because in the aggregate, it is a significant taxpayer dollar expenditure. And finally, I think that where maybe we could add value as members of the Board of Supervisors and as county staff is looking for ways to eliminate waste and help our volunteer fire and rescue companies achieve volume discounts on purchases when they're available, and things like that that might in the end save taxpayers money in the long run. So that's the context. I'm not today saying we should dissolve the fire levy board, but I think it's a question that is worthwhile asking for all the reasons I've just stated.
When you talked to the fire levy board, what did they say?
I haven't talked to the fire levy board about this, but I know that you contacted Mr. Stunner the other day when you saw this agenda item. So I talked to Mr. Stunner after you called him, and he understands the rationale that I laid out for him, which I've just laid out here. Do you want to, I don't know if you wanted to.
I can just speak to what's on board docs, and the assignment I took and put into board docs is, do you need to have a fire levy board if you have a district tax for fire? And the answer is no. The same answer for the EMS, which our district tax was put in when those two parts of the state code were combined. Now that they're separate, I think we're still good, and you don't have to have one. Your services, fire and rescue EMS services agreement, does reference the fire levy board in a few different areas. And it was my recommendation here that if the board is of a mind to move away from a fire levy board, you should clean that agreement up. I think there's a few other areas that we've talked about over time that you might want to look at in that agreement. And coming out of the clearing discussion, the agreement was an area where maybe we all want to look at it and see if it still fits as it's laid out, the county, the association, the companies, for all the different responsibilities of each party as it's laid out in that agreement. You might take that opportunity to look throughout the document to see if there are other things that make sense. But bottom line, you don't have to have one. Our neighboring communities who do this don't have one, but you can have one. It's totally up to the board.
Yeah, and I should also clarify that over probably the last 6 months, I've talked with 3 or 4 members of the fire levy board, to include Mr. Stunner, about this. And I mean, I think even those members of the fire levy board with whom I've spoken can see where maybe this is a vestige of a system that was once new and once maybe required us to have this additional body in place, if for no other reason than just to kind of park that expense review work in a standalone body, but also recognizing that maybe we've advanced beyond where it's fulfilling that same purpose, and maybe there's a better way to do it. So there hasn't been any strong reaction from anyone I've spoken with on the fire levy board about it. And I know Mr. Carney can speak to some of the specific initiatives the fire levy board has taken on recently, including requiring the submission of annual budgets to benchmark expenses against. And I think those initiatives have been excellent. And I think if we were to go in the direction of not relying in the future on the fire levy board, a lot of that excellent groundwork that our volunteers on that board have done, we would bring to bear on hopefully a much more efficient way of running this.
I can say after having served on the fire levy board, that there is an administrative process that's 99% done once it comes to us, that it would be more efficient to do this probably another way. I know a lot of the volunteers don't really want to show up with a book full of receipts that night. There's probably a way more efficient way of doing this. Sometimes the conversation gets rabbit-holed in a way like we do in here, like that's what just happens with committees and boards. I think the biggest thing is this, this question that we kind of talked about today, and I don't know if the request came from the chiefs or the association, but, taking that $10,000 up to $50,000. And so there's really that question about how do people ask for things, right? And it's been in the fire levy board that they come and say, hey, well, we have this thing, can we get the budget reconciliation, you get that done? I think that could be done administratively, and I think that there's a way to just kind of put this stuff into a central depository like it's done anyway, and then the public can anybody can look at it. That is really different though than the other question, which is like, okay, we need this. 10,000 is not going to cut anymore. We really want it to go up there. That's a totally different conversation that we should be having too. Right. The fire levy board has been wanting to have, and I'm just always kind of the mind that after having gone through these and approved these budgets, I just want to facilitate what they're doing. It says in the services agreement that they will provide a chart of accounts. That was not happening. And it's nobody's fault. It's just like what is it that we need to do? And so simplifying, and Mr. Curry has done this, I don't know how long it was, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, where you streamline the process, everybody's got the same spreadsheet, they plug it in, and then you create this document that's incredibly easy to look at and to use. And I think that previous to that, it was not that way.
Yeah, I don't know, the time all blends together,
Yeah.
but it was a transition of secretarial duties and clerking for that.
Right, and now you have these spreadsheets that are very easy to look at. Everybody can look at any company, really granular. And the question is really like, what are we trying to get done here? Like, are we really just getting together to just say, okay, and these poor chiefs and representatives come with these stack of receipts that are required by the services agreement, which is absolutely true. But there's maybe another way of doing that where, and that's an administrative thing. And that's what the board has been doing. So it is an interesting question, and it's one we can talk about at our next meeting, which is next week, which I will bring up, and I'll bring this up and see what people feel. But it's separate from that. I think that there is this question about when we need things, what would that process be? Because right now it's formalized. And they show up at the fire levy knowing every year that they can do that, and they can ask for stuff. So that's just a thought. We would just need to address that. But I will, bring this up at the meeting next week.
So,
Perfect timing.
has there been a vote of the association asking for this change? Or the Chiefs Committee, or any other organization, or is this just something the board is?
We're just talking about it.
This board is spearheading this idea.
I just put it out there. So I think part of the reason why it's on this agenda is because the fire levy board meets soon, and Mr. Carney obviously is here, and he'll be there, and he can raise it with them. So presumably the association, next time they meet, can just talk about it too, and maybe we'll get input. And at some future meeting, if it seems like there's sufficient inertia to actually consider a decision one way or the other, then we can put that forward. I just thought it was worth talking about because, like a lot of things, and like all of us, I'm out in the community, and people say things to me, and every once in a while I try to slow down and say, okay, I've heard this now multiple times, maybe this is a signal that we ought to consider a change. So this is truly a discussion item, which I think we've been having.
When I was first on the board, I think it was my first year, I was on the fire levy board. And at that time, it's been such a nice transition to watch over time, because in the beginning, a lot of the reports were a mess, and the receipts were there or not there, and they were in these, it was just not very well organized. And then I think through the association or the county or somehow, they all that wanted bookkeepers got bookkeepers. And watching the transition from not having a bookkeeper to having a bookkeeper, and the reporting being consistent and everything that's done today, is a huge change, and all, I think, very positive. When I talked to Chief Brown and others and talk about the fact that they have to take an evening out of their volunteers, right? So they come out of their area to go to this meeting, to sit there and maybe get questioned about the oil you're using or the Comcast price you're paying or whatever.
Or why did Company 9 buy so many brakes for their fire trucks, which is a silly question considering where they're located, but.
They're kind of wondering why they can't do that electronically anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you got a question, all the documents are there, ask it. If you don't have a question, why are you making me come out here as a volunteer and use more of my volunteer time for you not to have any problems with what I've submitted? So I think this is a great discussion to have. And I'm very glad that your meeting's coming up, because I'd love to hear what the fire levy board has to say. But so much of it is now organized and coming through the county where it wasn't before, that you're seeing it all and preparing it in a way that it's good for the fire levy board. So do we need that extra step, I think is the question.
Well, so the fire levy board, I totally agree with you. And the fire levy board is set up as a budget reconciliation board. It is not a policy board. It's not an advisory board. But I think that there is room for taking just what you said, because I do get that impression that people are showing up. It's so much more streamlined now that, and everybody, I think, has benefited from that. But I do agree that I think people would be relieved if they could just plug in their spreadsheet, and then these same questions can be asked, but they don't have to sit there literally for 3 hours.
Right.
While everybody else does it, and then it's like, okay, you guys can go. It's like, okay. So there's that part of it. The other part, I think, is complicated. What are we going to do about the 10,000, 50,000 thing?
Yeah.
And the reason I think that it's good for us to talk about it is because we're in charge of appropriation and figuring out that bit of it. We can appropriate anything we want within reason at time, like we did with the life packs today, and it has nothing to do with the fire levy board. And so there is that bigger question of, we have not, I think this is what the last fire levy meeting, which was, this is the 10,000, 50,000 thing, we have not kept up with the cost of doing business, and that $10,000 number is sort of ossified. It's just, it needs. Yeah. Anyway, I will bring it up and I'll report back.
Thank you. Sorry this is taking so long, but.
I don't know. The board just referred to this agreement a little bit earlier. I referred to it. I didn't recall when it was coming up, but it makes sense that Chief Summers is still here, that it's coming up this afternoon, and it's come up now. Mr. Stevens has been working with Chief Summers and anybody else who would want to discuss the potential of joining forces to tackle the pharmacy changes together. And as you heard earlier, it's very complicated, and one of the complications has to do with the OEMS licensing and being under a same umbrella. So they've worked very hard to try to find a way for volunteer companies to keep their identity and their autonomy, while also benefiting from the economies of scale and working together on the pharmacy issues and not having to do it 3 different times, 3 different ways. And what they found was that volunteer company can retain their Office of EMS license, but just not be a designated emergency response agency, a DERA. Our EMS response plan identifies the DERAs for each area of the county and basically empowers them to provide emergency medical response in those areas. Right now, for Flint Hills, doesn't have their own EMS license. They're under the county's EMS license. And so that DERA area is covered by Rappahannock County Fire and Rescue Department via the equipment owned and operated by Flint Hill. A slightly different way to tackle that is contemplated in the agreement attached to this agenda item, and that is for Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad to maintain their OEMS license, become non-DERA, have all their providers also affiliate with the county, with the Fire and Rescue Department, that fall under the county's OEMS license. And so they would be duly affiliated. Sperryville would continue to license the vehicles, just as other companies, public-private, can be a transport agency for EMS purposes. They would be licensed as a transport agency. They wouldn't need to change the lettering on their vehicle. They will not need to change the lettering on their vehicle. They will simply have to have their providers, and only those providers, not the, support members who don't run calls, that would not have to affiliate with the county, only those that work on the ambulance. And so also so the agreement speaks to that and the arrangement of how we will manage that process, because there is liability involved with individuals who are licensed, currently affiliated with Sperryville. They will then fall through under the county's license. And so on a great sunny day and then things go great, fantastic. But if there's a problem with care or an individual who's operating under the care of our license and the OMD, then it falls on Darren's shoulders, and ultimately mine. And so that kind of rolls back to when I was sitting in this room with people from OEMS and our OMD and the sheriff and Mr. Polster, and being read the riot act about another company. We don't want that to happen, and so we want to have everything squared away the best we can.
Very good.
To that end, I'll cut to the chase and move that we adopt a memorandum of agreement between Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad, Inc. and the County of Rappahannock, Virginia, as is attached in the agenda today.
Second.
So just want to,
I'm going to say Don will second that if you're, yep.
who is authorized to execute that? And the way I've had them prepared is that I'm authorized to execute it, but that's only if the motion says so.
Well, I would then amend my motion to authorize Gary Curry to execute the memorandum of agreement between Sperryville Volunteer Rescue Squad Incorporated and the County of Rappahannock, Virginia.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? I just want to say thank you for working so well and helping us out right now.
Yeah, and I have to say, I mean, going back to Company 7, under your leadership, Todd, your initiative on the pilot program, using paid paramedics to fill scheduling gaps, and then your incredibly robust, efficient scheduling that's currently in place. I mean, really a model, and we're grateful that you got trust in us to work with us on some of this stuff. So it's really, it's a great relationship, and very exciting, I think, for all our citizens.
All right.
Many thanks, Chief Summers.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
All right. Information reports. Board committee reports, Recreational Facilities Authority.
We had a good meeting. I'm trying to remember the salient points.
Did you happen to talk about the property for sale next door at all?
No, we did not.
Okay.
No, it didn't.
Any further acrimony between the pickleball versus tennis ball players?
There's always discussion. There's
Probably
discussion
always.
about that.
Dump
No,
grenade.
right now, thank you,
Thank you,
Todd.
Chief.
Thanks a lot, Todd.
Good night. The Park Foundation has been reinvigorated in a way that's really amazing. And they've been working really, really hard on their back end to kind of gear up to help the park with these upcoming improvements that, as you guys all know, are going to cost a lot of money, like the basketball court. You know, people really love the basketball court, and it really needs to be fixed. I'm just super thrilled that today's addition to the board brings a skill set that will hopefully help us to kind of manage that project. Because George Gardner, who was an incredible asset, you know, that was his life's work, was park management and facilities management and stuff. So, but we had, things are going along, and there's no acrimony. Only robust discussion.
Positive
Pickleball
vibes.
versus tennis. Pickleball, it's a sport. No, it's a game. No, it's a sport.
I heard that in before and after this week.
It's definitely a game. I'm a tennis player. I've been trying it.
Oh, no.
It's a game.
It's reached the board
Good thing
level.
Pat was already appointed as a pickleball player.
Yep.
I like it. It's just, it's a
Oh, it's gonna be I bet it's going to the Olympics at some point.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
All right, Public Safety Committee didn't meet.
The normal quarter kind of schedule had a meeting yesterday. That didn't seem prudent. I'll get with the group and get something scheduled over the next few weeks.
Okay. Planning Commission?
We did meet. We did not have any public hearings. We just did ordinance work and basically had a work session, which some of the fruits of which you'll see this evening.
Cool. Thanks.
Great. Fire Levy Board we just talked about. Anything else? No? Okay. Treasurer's reports. Good crafts. Cash flow is usually one that everybody is interested in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're beginning to see what happens when we don't get massive injections of revenue from the federal government. The lines start running close to each other. And you're putting to work some of those dollars for various capital reasons. So I wouldn't be surprised that by the end of the fiscal year that we were underneath the FY24 line.
No, probably soon with the expenditures for the life pack.
Every little bit, does that.
I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a $300,000 chunk.
Sure.
And we're less than $1 million away from where we were last year.
Yeah, it depends on when that expense hit versus when the revenue starts pouring in, because we had a little bit of a delay last year, so.
So what's our current cash balance? I can't.
Just over 9 million?
8.823.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yeah, just under.
But I mean, we've had some pretty robust discussions about this. I mean, we're sitting on a lot of money, and so I think it's okay to be utilizing some of that stuff for taxpayer benefit.
I just want to say I hear that in the community and that they hear supervisors saying that. And I just want to say, from my perspective, I don't think we're sitting on a lot of money. When I came on this board, we had a $3.5 to $4 million unfettered fund balance. And as it is now, it's more like about probably $6 million by the time all is said and done. But we do have capital project money, almost $2 million set aside, and that continues to build. So I just want to say that I don't think we have a lot of money in the bank at all, especially considering the size of the projects that we have coming up. I believe staff's working on financial guidance for us for policies that we've had in place or that we should have in place. And it's always been my belief, I mean, I know the majority of the board didn't go for this, so we didn't do it, that we should have a finance committee to establish these policies. So I just want to say, I think we should be very careful repeating or starting an idea that we have a lot of money on deposit, because when all of the needs need to be met, we need to be like any household that has a certain amount of money on deposit. And it's not a lot of money.
All I know is not too long ago, we were borrowing money in the downside of the income to make payroll.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I'm very pleased with where we are today. Don't want to spend money we don't need to spend, but I'm very impressed with where we've come since then.
Yes, ma'am, that was before my time on the board, Madam Chairman, and I would agree. And it's because of the sound fiscal guidance of the board through the years that we're in this situation now from the prior board and for this current board. We worked hard to dig out of that hole, but it doesn't take very long to get back in it either.
No, but we also, when we saw the property tax reassessments come through last time, I know I had a discussion with the treasurer and others, and if you take our cash on hand picture, and at that time considered the equalized property tax rate, it is, on the one hand, good to have cash on hand, but if you start, relatively speaking, to amass too much cash, it is easy for anyone to point out that we're overtaxing our citizens.
That's correct.
And at that time, I made very clear, and we ultimately went this direction, that I felt it was not enough to simply equalize the tax rate, that we should push below what the law required us to do, and we did. And I am one of those people who does say in the community that we have a solid cash balance. And I refer to the lowest cash point in the year as a reference point. And I am also quick to say that it is important to have cash on hand. We are not bouncing checks like we were nearly doing some years ago before we were all on this board. And that's a good position to be in. So I have no problem being a little bit optimistic. And the fact is that on large capital projects like the courthouse, I don't think anyone would ever expect us to write a check from our checking account to pay for a new courthouse. And so no doubt we will get strong guidance from our very strong, competent county administration team on the best way to approach a bond. And by the way, let's not forget, in this last budget cycle, through great guidance from our county administrator and assistant county administrator, we did pay off all remaining debt. And so we are debt-free, cash in the bank. And I think that is actually a positive message to send for the reasons that Ms. Donahue just pointed out.
All right, anything else under treasurer's report we'd like to look at? All right. Circuit Court Clerk's Office Revenue Report. It is interesting to see what comes in per line item, I think.
A lot of different line items, and all that information is in the revenue reports. It's just not presented in this way, and this way may be a little easier to digest it. I should point out for the review of legal matters, I did make a kind of a last minute update to this this week. The Court of Appeals you discussed at your last meeting, the potential Court of Appeals situation with the Flint Hill case. The Court of Appeals denied Mr. Connick's request for a rehearing, and so the board already acted and instructed Mr. Capps to file the appeal with the Supreme Court. That's now underway because they denied that request. And then also I've shared with the board that Harmony Manor, the Hendricksons, have filed a notice of appeal for the board's denial of their special exception, 240305. That was filed yesterday and was served yesterday. So the clock is ticking on that. It has been referred to Vay Court for assignment at council.
Thank you. Building permits, it's just interesting to see the spikes in the reports.
Yeah.
What's all that? Maybe I don't understand commercial permits. What all is?
Non-residential?
Yeah, but I mean, that looks like a lot.
Well, so any of the work that was done, for example, in the bank branch in Flint Hill
Okay.
would be commercial. So if they changed their electrical service or something like that.
Anything on VDOT that we need to?
No.
No, okay. All right. We are in matters presented by the board.
I just want to remind everyone that at the end of this month is our farm tour. They have for, I think this is their 15th year in operation. They skipped 1 year, they skipped COVID. So last full weekend in September, farm tour. Check them out. I know that our guidebooks are out and Laurie and the folks are getting them across the county.
Excellent. They've got 2 or 3 more farms, I think, on there. Did I read? Something like that.
It was a few,
I saw 4.
more than 2 or 3,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ms. Smith?
I just wanted to say, I think everyone's excited to welcome a new superintendent at the park. Having had a couple of people serve as interim terms is less than ideal, I think, from a correspondence perspective. So it'll be nice to get that continuity again. And I would just ask the county administrator, when you do speak to him, of course, to reiterate always the concerns at the entrances for traffic backing up at the top of the mountain, which is a seasonal concern always.
Did you see he's landing October 7th? Lucky him.
Wow,
Oh,
talk
man.
about drinking from a fire hose.
Wow.
Poor guy. We should send him a basket of fruit or something.
An autumn theme, everything pumpkin spice.
Oh, well, welcome. Now please get to work. It's a very, very challenging timing for him, I'm sure. But I do always appreciate that our partners at the park and VDOT help us to manage that situation, which we have small problems with. So many of our neighbors have really large problems with that volume of traffic traveling to the park. I know there's an upcoming regional broadband update on the 19th. So I did just want to mention a conversation that I'd had with Mr. Curry. I believe as a county we should identify some target businesses that we've probably all heard from that say, hey, I really need this. I have strategic residential places that I know if the project gets to, it will be deemed a success in my mind. But in the district that I represent, there is a very high user for internet service, and he and his business really suffer from lack of redundancy. And to my mind, if he as a business can't receive robust service from our initiative, that initiative really will have failed. So I would just encourage folks to think about areas or businesses in their district that that really will be the gauge for this project. And West Sperryville is where this particular business is. I also think of the 231 corridor, which has so many agriculturally related businesses, really needs robust service to future-proof their business plans. And even up into Little Devil Staircase area, they really suffer back there, and most folks have gotten Starlink by now. But that is a very challenging terrain, and I would be remiss if I didn't try to stick up for folks all through the Piedmont district that really do want the service and talk to me about it when I ran and continue to talk to me about it. For carnival security, I did just want to say, and I don't want to step on anybody's toes with this, but I know people come from all over the place for the Amosville Carnival, and if we can't pay for that out of tourism money, I give up. Because it seems to me that is a big draw from every county around us, and it is a big tourism draw, and we pay for other tourism events out of that money, I believe. and we should leverage the tourism money. If it's $1,000, I think we've got 42,000 left in that fund, Bonnie, is that correct? Do you know off the top of your head? I think I looked at it the other day, and I think it was 42,000 dedicated for tourism, and we should really be paying for that security, because that is a party that brings a lot of people to Rappahannock
That decision
County.
didn't come through admin. I'm not sure what the deal is here. It might have something to do between the sheriff and them.
Well, and I hadn't planned to talk about it today, but it
Yeah.
was brought up, so,
If we knew about it, we could maybe
Yeah,
do something with it.
Yeah, it wasn't, I think that's a conversation with other folks, because I don't think it was just Amosville Carnival.
oh, okay.
Right.
Well,
And, yeah.
I'm just saying, I think that those kinds of events bring a lot of people into the county. And I think in the past, we've leveraged tourism dollars for sheriff department coverage for traffic.
With the
so-
annual budget does recognize there's certain costs that are borne by the sheriff's office for these tourist-centric events. And so we've kind of identified that in the macro. Maybe there needs to be a finer review with all parties.
That list includes the carnival.
Yeah.
I don't believe it does, but I need to check that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
agree. It seems like a no-brainer.
Mr. Whitson?
Nothing.
Mr. Carney?
I want to bring up that Jim Bankston, who passed away, who served the county for 30 years as game warden and conservation law officer, I think, as well, we'll be having a memorial at Graves Mountain Lodge on September 21st at 1 p.m. At the Sycamore Pavilion, which is like the first left after the main lodge entrance. I ran into Joanne Bankston, who has since moved to North Carolina, but I saw her at Flatwood a couple of weeks ago, and I said that I would let everyone know. They ran something in the paper, but I knew Jim Bankston for basically my whole life, and he was incredibly dedicated to this county and to conservation efforts. So just wanted to thank him and pass that along.
Thank you. And I just want to say welcome to Oakview Bank in Flint Hill. They have joined the rest of Flint Hill with skeleton in the front yard. And I do have people questioning the skeletons in Flint Hill. So I think most people just need to know this is fun. People needed some levity, I think, and one skeleton led to many more in the county. And all I've heard really is that at 2 a.m. when the deputies are doing, making sure doors are locked, it's a little spooky. But that, and I do have to say how proud and excited I am for Flint Hill Volunteer Fire and Rescue. At this point, having 40-plus members that are active in one way or another, and the energy, I think some of you have been to meetings, the energy that's in the room, the weekends, people working together to make progress has just been amazing to watch, and I'm thankful for the citizens in the Wakefield District and beyond that are helping us out. So, all right, at this time, closed meeting personnel matters.
I like that. You're the official reader.
Yes.
You inherited that from Chris.
I move that the Rappahannock County Board of Supervisors conduct a closed meeting in accordance with Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia for the purpose of 1. Assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of any public body. Section 2.2-3711A1. The subject matter of the closed meeting will be County Administrator's annual performance review pursuant to Section 15 of his employment agreement.
All right.
That was a
That
motion.
motion